The first book of the Kings, session. I keep on forgetting where we are. Yesterday we did session 38, and it was this whole sad event of the house of Israel that cast Yahuwah behind her back. And today, okay, session 39, I want to read for you Jeremiah 11, verse 10. They are turned back to the iniquities of their fathers. Remember in 1 Kings 14, Jeroboam, the house of Israel, cast Yahuwah behind their back. They turned back, they went back to the apostasy of their forefathers. They refused to hear Shema, my words, and they went after other gods to serve them. And now we've looked at the house of Israel yesterday. Today we're looking at the house of Judah. And see Jeremiah 11 verse 10. Underline this in your Bible. God says, the house of Israel and the house of Judah have broken my covenant, which I made with their fathers. It's really sad. I mean, we can hear Yahuwah's heartbreak in this. So after discussing the house of Israel that went into the Gentile nations, we now look at the house of Judah. So we continue 1 Kings 14 from verse 21. And Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Okay, so remember, Jeroboam reigns in the house of Israel in the northern parts. Rehoboam is the son of Solomon. Remember, R and S are next to one another in the alphabet. So Rehoboam, son of Solomon, reigns in the south in Judah over the two tribes that is today called the Jews. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which Yahuwah chose out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. And his mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonite. So, yeah, how on earth did this happen? If Solomon had married a beautiful Hebrew girl and there was a God fearing son that came out of that union, it would have been so much better. But one of his 300 wives and 700 concubines, and one of them was an Ammonite from the Ammonites, which are absolute pagan. And here, I don't know why Rehoboam was chosen. I mean, I don't even know. Can you imagine how many children Solomon had? He had 1,000 wives. I mean, honestly. But anyway, so whatever reason it is, Rehoboam was chosen and his mother was an Ammonite. Judah did evil in the sight of Yahuwah. They provoked him to jealousy with their sins, which they have committed, above all that their fathers had done. So if we can remember all the sins that we read about in Samuel, you go back as far as Judah, who sinned against Jacob, who sinned against Joseph, who sinned against all his brothers. And you go through the whole Exodus journey. And you go through, remember in the book of Judges and Joshua, we looked at so many Antichrist figures from the house of Judah. But here it says, up to this point, Judah has done the worst. This is worse than ever before. And they have committed sin above all that their fathers had done. For they also built themselves high places and images and groves, and every high tree, and under every green Christmas tree. Oh, and there were also Sodomites in the land. So that makes you think of Sodom and Gomorrah. That makes you think, remember, where's this now? This is in Jerusalem, the beautiful city of David, that Yahuwah have chosen above all the cities to put his name, Yahuwah, Yerushalayim, to put his name there. This is God's city. And here in the land, you've got Sodom and Gomorrah. And we see in the book of Revelation, it says, even Sodom and Egypt, there where our master was executed, which we know is Jerusalem. So Jerusalem becomes Sodom and Gomorrah. Jerusalem becomes Egypt. Jerusalem is seen prophetically as Sodom. And here we even have the Sodomites. What is a Sodomite? No, I don't know. I don't want to say what it is. It's got to do with homosexuality in the worst sense. So, yeah, just Google the definition. And they did according to all the abominations of the nations, which Yahuwah has cast out before the children of Israel. Talking about sodomy, that is the number one pagan ritual for the Freemasons to be initiated. Anyway, so it came to pass in the 5th year of King Rehoboam that Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem, and he took away the treasures of the house of Yahuwah. I mean, all the treasures, all the money, all the gold. And he took away the treasures of the king's house. Can you remember how much tons and tons and tons of gold and silver and bronze? Remember with Solomon, it said at one stage I read for you that silver, was almost like useless. It was worth a lot. But there was so much gold in Jerusalem and in Israel with Solomon after David that, silver became like trash. They threw it in the streets. So they took away all the shields of gold which Solomon had made. And King Rehoboam made in their stead brazen shields. So the golden shields was replaced with the bronze shields. And he committed them to the hands of the chief of the guard, which kept the door of the king's house. This makes me think of the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. You've got gold, you've got silver, you've got bronze. And each kingdom is worse than the previous one, yet it's got the elements of the previous ones in it. So here the gold is replaced by the bronze. And it was so, when the king went into the house of Yahuwah, that the guard bore them or carried these brazen shields, and he brought them back into the guard's chamber. Now the rest of the acts of Rehoboam, all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? And there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all their days. And Rehoboam died, and he slept with his fathers, and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. All right, so remember what this means. His body is put into the sepulchre together with David and Solomon, and eventually when the body is disintegrated, the bones is put in a smaller container in the same cave. And his mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonite. It's told to us a second time, just to remind us, his mother was a pagan. And Abijam, his son, reigned in his stead. All right, this is what I'm reading for you out of 1 Kings 14. Now I want to take it verse by verse, and I'm going to show you, just the consistency of the word of Yahuwah over and over again, the trustworthiness of this amazing God's Bible that he has written for us, both Old and New Testament. So remember, I read for you Jeremiah 11 verse 10. Both the house of Israel and the house of Judah have broken my covenant. Right. Now, specifically talking about the house of Judah, Jeremiah 11 verse 2. This is the words of the covenant of Yahuwah that Jeremiah must speak unto the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So the entire Jeremiah 11, it talks about both houses, but this specific message of Jeremiah 11 is pointed or intended for the house of Judah, for those living in Jerusalem, the inhabitants of Judah. All right. So when you look at Jeremiah 11 verse 7, it says, I earnestly, God was seriously protesting unto your fathers in the day that I brought them up out of the land of Egypt, even unto this day. I have seriously tried to speak to you, to protest against you and your fathers. From the morning early, I've been rising early every morning since then up to this day. And I've been saying in your ears, oh my child, Judah, just obey my voice. Can you hear this? God has earnestly, which means seriously, he has protested. Let's look at this word in the Hebrew. This word protesting, he has been repeating, he has been testifying, he has been asking, admonishing, charging, protesting, calling, recording, giving warning over and over and over again, repeating intensively, earnestly. He has been trying to call them to obey his voice. And it says, from early in the morning, rising early. I'm trying to earnestly get you to obey my voice. So 1 Kings 14 and Jeremiah 11. Look at this in sequence. Jeremiah 11:8. Yet they obeyed not, nor did they incline their ear, but they walked everyone in the imagination of their evil hearts. Therefore I will bring upon them all the words of this covenant, which I commanded them to do, but they did not do it. So what is the words of this covenant that God is going to bring over them? Well, basically it's the Torah. Torah says if you obey, here's the blessings. If you disobey, here's the curses. So here we see in 1 Kings 14, they do not listen. They provoke their husband, Yahuwah, although I was a husband to them, Jeremiah 31, renewed covenant. So this is provoking Yahuwah, who's the husband, to jealousy, building the high places, going under the green trees, offering the incense in the dark, mystical, secret forests under the green trees. Here you can think about the whole New Age movement. You can think about the Druids. Remember the ancient English Druid system. What are those big stones that's put in a circle in England, in Britain? Stonehenge, where they worship at Stonehenge. And if you look at the whole Druid system, it's always got to do with the oak tree, and that's where the Hollywood comes from. This whole magician, esoteric, occult, secret, interesting, dabbling in the hidden things of the spiritual world. So, and they've got this whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing going for them. So Yahweh says, you're doing what's right in your own eyes. And I told you, this is one of the rituals that the Freemasons do today. And, let's talk about, not talk about, but let's mention also the Jesuits. Let's mention the Crusaders. Let's mention the whole elite system, the whole New World Order system. That is an old, ancient, Nimrod, Babylonian world system. And I'm saying this specifically because here 1 Kings 14 talks about the Sodomites and the iniquity and the abominations that Judah is doing. Jeremiah 11, God is directing his admonitions from early in the morning to Judah. Of course, to the whole of Israel, but he's got messages and prophets for Judah, and he's got messages and prophets for Israel. And here, Jeremiah 11, verse 9, Yahweh said unto me, so Yahuwah is speaking to Jeremiah, and Yahuwah is opening, is revealing his heart to Jeremiah. He's saying, Jeremiah, I'm rising from early to speak to these people. But you know what they're doing? Look at what Judah is doing. A conspiracy is found among the men of Judah and among the inhabitants of Jerusalem. This is important to remember, because I'm going to break open for you the men of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the conspiracy. All right, before I get to that, when the king Shishak from Egypt came up against Jerusalem and took away the treasures of Jerusalem, it's no wonder. God says in Jeremiah 11, verse 11, therefore says Yahweh, behold, house of Israel and house of Judah, I'll bring evil upon you, and you will not be able to escape, and you will cry unto me, but I will not listen to you. So here, all these treasures that David worked so hard to gather together for the house of God and for the city of Jerusalem is now stolen and taken away by Shishak, the king of Egypt. And it takes everything away. In Jeremiah 11, verse 12, God says, you know what, Judah? Look at Jeremiah 11, verse 12. Then shall the cities of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem go and cry unto their gods. Because God said in verse 11, they'll cry unto me. I'm not going to listen to them. I've been crying to them since their father's time, rising early in the morning, but they do not listen. They refuse to listen to me. So when the evil come upon them, they're going to cry to me, and I'm not going to listen to them. So therefore, Judah will go to their gods, and they will cry unto their gods to whom they offer incense. But not even these gods are going to save them out of all the times of their trouble. And this is exactly what happens. 1 Kings 14, verse 26. The king Shishak came and took everything away, took all of it away. Of course, we see this is now away from Jerusalem. And Jeremiah 11 says, the inhabitants of Jerusalem will cry unto him when the enemy comes over them. And we know that, they still did not repent and return to Yahuwah. So after Shishak took all their treasures away, the next thing that's going to happen will be the king of Babylon. That's going to take everything in the temple away. Oh, but let's continue further. I want you to look at this thing about the conspiracy. The conspiracy that is found in Judah. And this is what Yahuwah is complaining about in 1 Kings. Trying to get Judah to not be like Israel. Judah to not make the same mistakes as Israel, but they refuse to listen. So here God says in verse 9, look, there's a conspiracy found among the men of Judah. So you can read Revelation 2 verse 9. It's all about the Jews from the house of Judah that say they are Jews, but they are actually from the synagogue of Satan. You can look at Psalm 2, where the world rulers, which we know is the right at the top of the pyramid, you've got the Jews controlling the banks, Hollywood, and out of that, they control everything, the whole media system. And Psalm 2 is all about the conspiracy of the kings of the earth against Yahuwah and against his anointed. So this whole conspiracy of the rulers of the world that comes from the house of Judah, from God's own covenant people, is found to be against Yahuwah. And this is what Yahuwah is complaining about. And this is what Yahuwah is trying to prevent. But unfortunately, we see that Yahuwah is prophesying all the evil that I have warned you about, rising early in the morning, is now coming over you. And also because of this curse, because of both the house of Judah and the house of Israel, Jeremiah 11 verse 10, that is breaking God's covenant, there is 1 Kings 14 verse 30, war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of their lives. I can read this verse again, and I can replace Rehoboam with Judah, because he's the king of Judah. And I can replace Jeroboam with the house of Israel, because he's the king of the house of Israel. And there was war between Judah and Israel all the days of their lives. Now I can say this again. I can replace Judah with Jews and Israel with Gentiles. There's war between the Jews and Israel all their days. Isaiah 11 verse 13. Isaiah 11 verse 13. Go with me. The envy of Ephraim against Judah and the fighting of Judah against Ephraim. So Isaiah 11, together with Jeremiah 11, together with Ezekiel 11, together with Romans 11, together with Revelation 11, all the 11th chapters is talking about this war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam, between Jew and Gentile, between Israel and Judah. So God says he will assemble the outcast of Israel, and he will gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Isaiah 11 verse 12. Because there's envy and vexing and fighting between Israel and Judah. But Isaiah 11 verse 13 says, when Yahuwah gathers these two houses back in one restored kingdom again, then the envy and the vexing and the fighting and the backbiting and the killing and the warring will end. Because Ezekiel 11, verse 15. Ezekiel 11, verse 15. Son of man, your brothers, even your brothers, the men of your kindred, the men of your family, and all the house of Israel, they unto whom the inhabitants of Jerusalem have said, get you far away from Yahuwah, because Yahuwah have given us this land as possession. What is Yahuwah saying here through the prophet in Ezekiel 11? He's speaking to Ezekiel, and he's telling Ezekiel, your brothers, now the house of Israel. The house of Israel is the brothers of the house of Judah. Ezekiel is the prophet over the house of Judah. Ezekiel is in the time of the Babylonian exile of Judah. So God says to Judah, your brothers are they who are the house of Israel. And you, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, you are telling your brothers, the house of Israel, get away from Yahuwah. Get away from this land. This land is ours. Well, today, if I read 1 Kings 14:30 again, there's war between the Jews and the Gentiles. Remember, I told you guys when I was in Israel, the Jewish rabbi said to me, as a Gentile woman, who told him that we Gentiles who keep the Sabbath day are grafted back into the kingdom of Yahuwah. And he said to me, you have nothing to do with Hashem. You cannot keep the Sabbath day. You do not belong in the Holy Land. You must go back to your own lands. You are dogs. Remember, that's exactly what the Bible says. And I've read this verse before, and I never understood it in Ezekiel 11:15. And I really cried quite a lot because I was excited to go to Jerusalem, going to meet my Jewish brothers, blah, blah, blah. And they hated me. Why? There's war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Because the inhabitants of Jerusalem, Rehoboam, the Jews, say to their brothers, although we are their brothers and sisters, they say to us, remember Isaiah 11? There's vexing. Judah vexes Ephraim. Judah fights against Joseph and Ephraim, like he did in Genesis. So Judah is telling Ephraim, man, you dogs, you Gentile pigs, get out of Israel, get out of Jerusalem. God has given us, the Jews, this land. Get you away from Yahuwah. Yahuwah is our God. You do not serve Yahuwah. You go and worship your son God, Jesus Christ, born 25 December, Christmas, blah, blah, blah. And then I told him, I don't worship Jesus Christ. No. If you don't convert to Judaism, then you cannot worship Yotaivafe. And you cannot be in covenant. And I said, well, I am worshipping Yotaivafe. He's the creator of heaven and earth. I do not worship Jesus Christos, the Greek God. We do not keep Christmas and we eat kosher according to the God of the Bible. It's not the God of the Jews. And I started giving him the Old Testament prophets, and he was just not interested. He just talked right over me, started screaming eventually. But anyway, this is in the Bible. 1 Kings 14, verse 30, the war between Judah and Israel. Isaiah 11, verse 13, vexing and adversary and jealousy and envy between Israel, also called Ephraim, and Judah. Ezekiel 11, because Judah tells Ephraim, we are sick and tired of you. Get away from us. Get out of our holy land. And now, of course, when you go to Romans 11, you understand this whole thing about the natural branches and the wild branches. And how the natural branches and the wild branches are part of the same tree. Right? And yet, there's war. The wild branches wants to boast against the natural branches. Oh, we Christians, we Gentiles are now the New Testament church. You Jews are old news. You Jews are old news. But Paul says, be careful, you arrogant little Christian. If you are grafted into this tree, you need to do what this tree does. You need to bear the same fruits as the genetic material that's found in the roots, which is Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, out of which came Judah and Israel. And do not boast against the natural branches that's broken off, because Yahuwah's going to graft them back in. But be careful, if you think you're going to boast against the Jews, God's going to break you off again and throw you away and burn you up. So Romans 11, Isaiah 11, Ezekiel 11, and then Revelation 11 talks about the temple, basically that the Jews are going to rebuild, as well as the spiritual temple that is trampled by the Gentiles, by the house of Ephraim, until such time as the kingdom is restored and Yeshua stands up from his position as high priest and goes into his position as king to take again the kingdom of Yahweh and restore it and establish it. So yeah, absolutely gorgeous how we can see this prophetic historical events in 1 Kings 14, but how it relates to the prophecies in Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Romans, and how we can see the fulfillment today, how I physically experienced it in the streets of Jerusalem. So the war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam is breaking Yahuwah's heart. He's rising early, trying to call everyone back to his covenant. But if we don't listen, Egypt is going to come and take everything away from us. And whatever's left, Babylon is going to come and take away. And whatever's left, the Jews that are ruling the world is going to come and take the rest away. And do I need to remind you that we have another 11th chapter, which is Daniel 11? Isn't it amazing? Where Yahuwah says, all this is going to happen. But when you witness for me, when you turn back, O house of Israel and O house of Judah, and you obey my voice, then you'll be my witnesses in Daniel 11. You'll be persecuted by all means. Unfortunately, the curse of your disobedience is going to play out in your lifetime. But then out of that, out of your witnessing, out of your turning back to me, not turning your back on me, but turning back to me, you will be washed white as snow and you will be purified. Because this is ultimately Yahuwah's heart. This is ultimately what he wants. He's crying in 1 Kings 14, verse 9, you've turned your back on me. He's crying in Jeremiah 11, I rise early and I try to speak to you, but you refuse to listen to me. But, eventually, the ultimate fulfillment of Yahuwah's heart is to restore the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of Jacob, the kingdom of David, the kingdom of Yeshua. That's why the disciples asked Yeshua in Acts 1, will you now restore the kingdom of Israel? And he said, it's not time yet. There's still so much that has to happen. The whole gathering, the scattering, the gathering, the covenant, the renewed covenant. There's so much that still has to happen until finally the restoration will happen. But both Yeshua's heart, he had to drink the bitter cup for Israel so she can be regathered with the house of Judah and become one in the hand of Messiah, Ezekiel 37, because that is ultimately the heart of Yahuwah. That's what Yahuwah wants. That's the will of Yahuwah. Hear his heart. In Jeremiah 32, verse 41, yes, I will rejoice over them. I'll do them good. I'll plant them again in this land. And I'll do this assuredly with my whole heart and with my whole soul. For thus says Yahuwah, like as I have brought all this great evil upon this people, so will I bring upon them all the good that I have promised them. So, Israel, Gentiles, son of strangers, turn back to Yahuwah's covenant. O house of Judah, Jews, turn back to the covenant of Yahuwah. Because ultimately this is Abba's heart, our Father's heart, is for Israel and Judah to be restored, and for this war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam to come to an end, and for us to be one nation again, as the prophet says, and one king, will be king over us in the land and in the city where Yahuwah has called out his beautiful name.